Hi, everybody. Leanne and Mason here for our Different Perspectives podcast. Hi, Mason.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome to a Different Perspectives with Leanne and Mason Halza. We are here to discuss our different viewpoints through the lens of energy work. Today, we'll be discussing our relationship with time, habits, and various things of that nature. Myself, Leanne, has a background of working in business before I found my true path and transitioned to energy work. And I'm currently the owner of the Healing Studio in Broomfield, Colorado, where I work as a healer and a teacher full time. You can find more about me on insightfulinspirations.com. Mason, my son, has had the unique opportunity to be raised in a subtle energy-aware household where more than meets the eye is not only validated, but encouraged to explore. He's currently a journalist at CSU. You can find his current work at the Rocky Mountain Collegian. All right. So we got a couple of questions to address before we move on from our previous episode. So for those of you who are just watching us or listening to us later and didn't catch the last episode, we were talking about money and the energy of money and things like that. And one of the questions that came up was that you mentioned being fairness in regards to money. So the comment was really geared towards you, Mason. So the comment was actually kind of imagine that there could be a little pushback to a life with a speed racer mom who has a propensity for vast amounts of work. So she wanted to know kind of what your thoughts are on that, of what it's like to live with me as a kind of a crazy worker bee and type A personality, but also then she said you mentioned fairness and money and wondered if it would ever been unfair to you. Had money ever been a fairness issue?
Well, I'll answer that last one first. I don't think it's ever been unfair to me personally. I mean, there have been times where I thought, man, I'm working harder than I think I am being paid for, right? And I think everyone has that moment when they're working at a minimum wage job. But I think that I've just seen money be unfair to a lot of people.
Do you want to give an example?
Especially when I watch like overseas documentaries where we see like the fallout of us living our exorbitant lives. And you see where we were just watching actually on John Oliver the other night, how they're piling up plastic in Malaysia. And I see that a lot because there will be countries in the middle of Africa where they find oil and the US just sends troops in and doesn't help the people at all. And that was actually one of the moments, like it was like 2 years ago when I was watching this Vice documentary and they were talking to the chief of a village there. And he was saying, yeah, we found oil and we tried to get money out of it, but they made us sign a contract that we didn't understand and we lost all this money. Ugh. And it could have like saved their city and stuff, and they're just get exploited.
Yeah, exploitation's a real problem. So what about the speed racer comment? Your mother, do you have a little pushback from having a mother who's kind of been, racing through life?
Yeah. But I think that what I actually respect about the way that you work is that you seem to not work for the money, you work for the clients, right?
True.
You work for this big client base and you're just helping people and doing what you want all day. And
yeah.
Even if you don't see, because I see it a lot of times where you don't see the output that I think that you should be seeing from that much work, that it just seems to be worth it, even though it's not a lot.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting that you say that because I do technically charge a lot for a single session, but what it takes for me to be this person, this energy healer, and the work that it takes to run the business and everything is, a lot of hours that don't get paid, that are just because I'm doing my best to try to, move everybody along.
And your job involves so much like knowing someone's personal life. And so something happens in someone's personal life and they want to talk about it. And I see that a lot where you're just like, it's 9 p.m. at night and there's a client that has a big issue and you're just like, all right, gotta go.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I definitely do a little bit too much, maybe too much running into like being in the middle of big things. But yeah, I'm trying to balance. I'm trying to learn balance. um, another question was about the Light Council, and the Light Council said that there were always ways to be financially secure without working. But she wanted to know what some of those ways were and if we've actually participated in any of them. I'll speak to that first. I mean, I think the Light Council is referring to like ways that people manifest. And yeah, I mean, I've definitely experienced many things that just kind of spontaneously, something happens and I end up with the money I needed for something that I didn't think I was going to be able to have. And, sometimes through really just kind of unheard of ways. I mean, mostly it's, it's like, unexpected refund, or somebody hires me for a job and then they don't really need it done, but they're saying keep the money, or things like that. And I feel like that happens to you too. I feel like you manifest windfalls when you need them.
Yeah, I would say that's true.
Yeah.
But I would say that I don't think that you can get away with not working and still be like.
Well, I don't think the universe wants us just to sit around and do nothing. I think that we're being of service to each other is part of how we manifest.
Actually, I kind of disagree with that.
Okay.
Because I think from a philosophical standpoint, having just all this time to sit around and think about things has been good for us in our history. I mean, if you look back to Greece, yeah, they had a lot of slaves working for them, but all the work, like all this, that's what the point that I was going to make is that you can't not work because it always comes from somewhere. Because that work always comes from somewhere. So you look at all these great thinkers that came about in this ancient Greek era that just had all this time to sit and talk and think about things and have all these exorbitant discussions about philosophy and life and why do we exist. And it led to a lot of great things, I think. So there's like a positive and a negative.
Well, like you said, there's always somebody doing the work though.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and so I think that this kind of bridges us into our relationship with time and how we can, think about time. Like for me, I am pretty much get out of bed and go. I mean, even if I'm like sitting with my computer on my lap, I'm going. I'm not just like sitting around. Pretty much like the minute I wake up, and then the minute I go to bed, and then I go to sleep, and I happen to talk a lot in my sleep, and then I get up and go again. And I know your father likes to get up, and he actually likes to try to get up before me because he knows that the doing and going will happen when I wake up. So he and I happen to need more sleep than he does, just because I do go so intensely. But he likes to get up and wind up and have the day be a little bit, smoother, and then wind down in the evening. So I don't know. What do you think about relationship with time? And now that you've had roommates and, girlfriends and all these things, like what do you think about time and people's relationship?
A huge flip from high school to college. So when I was in high school, packed schedule all the time. Like I had no free time. Like if you think back to even freshman through junior year, I had soccer and track at the same time one year. I had football and soccer at the same time one year. So I would go school from 8:15 a.m. until like 3:30 in the afternoon, and then I would have practices until like 7. And I think that was after that like ended, and I was like, okay, I don't have to be busy. I don't have all of these obligations. I just kind of relaxed into doing nothing. And I think that having one thing to do in a day is you're not going to want to do that one thing if you only have that thing to do. But if you have 12 things to do in a day, you're more likely to get that one extra thing done, right?
Well, that's interesting that you say that because, that whole concept of that time's relative. And really, I'm telling you, like I tell my clients who are trying to start a new business or whatever, show up to the place that you want things to start manifesting and do something to say you're showing up to a specific kind of work at specific times a day to let the universe know I'm creating the space, right? Because if you don't, if you just, oh, I don't have any clients on my schedule, or I don't have a class, or I don't have a job, or whatever, I'm just going to sit around and, play video games or whatever, then the universe goes, oh, you want to sit around and play video games. Okay. And so there's more room made for that. But if you actually show up and you do something to contribute. So let's say you're looking for a job and you want a job that is like a 9 to 5 job. If you from 9 to 5 o'clock are spending time applying for jobs, assessing your skills, fantasizing about what you might want to be doing, show up to the desk that you want to be working at, all of those things really actually energetically create this relationship with time that help manifest. So what you're describing is when you had all those things going on, you fit them in, you got them done, but when you stopped having to have all of those things, then what happened?
Then I think that it's like the best metaphor I can think of is like contracting and relaxing. Like I think that there's a lot of people, I think you're like this, where you've just been contracted your whole life. You're busy, busy, busy. And I think that what happens for some people is that they see a gap of free time and they go into that and they're like, oh, I like this. I like having all this free time. I should do this more often. And then they relax into that.
Well, and I'm not saying people shouldn't relax. I mean, there's definitely, like, if you think of energetics, you need to do and be and somewhat of an equal.
I think it's getting comfortable doing less.
Okay.
A lot of people, I think that's happened over the past year for sure. To me, anyways.
So people getting comfortable doing less because of their COVID quarantine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I think though there is a true energetics around time and your relationship with it. And I guess that's why I'm wondering if now that you've lived at home, and so you kind of have to just deal with the way your parents deal with time until you move out, and then you got to do your own relationship with time. And then you've got your roommates, and like I said, your girlfriends and your friends. Like what have you learned about other people's relationship with time?
Well, about other people's relationship with time is that if it's well organized, everyone seems to be functioning very well. I think time management is the biggest thing that anyone can do. And I think that it's completely relative.
Yeah.
4 hours sitting at home between 9 a.m. and noon is way different than 4 hours at work.
Right. Right. And when you're enjoying yourself, a lot of times time flies, right? And when you're not enjoying yourself, sometimes time is trudging along. Yeah. And we just had a whole thing with time with your brother at the doctor's office because he was saying he had to be at work and I had to be on this podcast at the same time. And he didn't like that we had a doctor's appointment. The doctors were running behind because it was Friday afternoon and it was stressing him out, but we were in and out and back home with plenty of time. But his relationship with that was like stress for like 3 hours before. So I think that, sometimes like people stress about time, their use of time. Like, am I going to get enough sleep? Or am I going to be able to, get to this other place in time? Like, I think sometimes we're so far future that we're not actually being in the present and utilizing time effectively.
I think that the biggest difference between how we perceive time is doing versus being.
But what do you say about the time spent stressing over time?
I think it depends because I think time goes really quickly when you're stressing about something that's going to happen in the future, but it goes really slow when you're stressing about what you're doing right then.
Okay, interesting. I could see that. But I think that nobody benefits from stressing about future time.
Yeah.
Like taking a test and looking at the clock over and over and over, right? Just take the test and just know that you're given the time. Um,
But I think that there's this, I think everyone has a bad relationship with time because we measure it so precisely all the time. Because everything's down to this and this time. And if you're 5 minutes late, that's not okay. And it's like 5 minutes to them might have been different than 5 minutes to me.
well, true, but I think it's also about expectations, right? If you're 5 minutes late to work and somebody else can't leave work until you get there, or somebody else can't, I know this happens with like the medical profession, for example. Like, you're on your feet for 12 hours at a shift, and if your next person doesn't show up, you can't just leave. Can't just be like, oh, clock out, my time's done. You have to wait for the other person to come. So if you're reliant on someone else, or someone else is reliant on you, I think that can also, like, you have to honor precision more than if you're maybe, I don't know, sitting around watching a movie or something.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely true. But I think that how we structure our time defines, like I said, everything about us. I think that our use of time changes based on what time we go to bed. When I was working that overnight job, I noticed the time was completely different.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
If I was sleeping, went to bed at 4 or 5 a.m. and wake up at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, then my day is like, it was like 3 p.m. to 6 a.m. And it didn't feel normal at all. It felt like I would have a quarter of a day and then I would be trying to stay up all night. And it was really weird. I did not like it.
Yeah, I think night shifts and working nights and things like that can really mess with somebody. I do think that that's true.
There's studies about that, how like a night clerk has a lot more stress than someone who works during the day.
And typically, although not in your case, but they got paid better because they were working in the nighttime.
Yeah, not in my case.
Not in your case. But like somebody who works overnight in a hospital, for example, might get, extra pay for being there at night, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I just want to shout out to our audience for a minute here while we're talking. For those of you who are watching this now with us or listening to us later, we definitely take your questions and comments. We like them. And if you want to comment later and have us follow up with in a previous podcast, we totally welcome that. But if you're watching live and you have a question about what we're talking about too, you can pipe up. So what about, we were talking about time and the energetics of it. I mean, really, like, time, I think you can really, and I see this, that people have different relationships with time. The people who are always late, for example, or the people who are always way early. I definitely find that those are different energetic systems too. And people who like to stay up late versus people who like to get up early. Are you a night owl or a morning person?
Both. I can be both.
I don't think you're a morning person.
I can be. Once I'm up, I'm up.
I think you can be, but I don't think that if you were left to your own devices, you would be.
Well, yeah.
Which is funny because when you were a baby, you were a good sleeper, but you were up super early, which I am definitely a night person and like to stay up late and get up late. And you, as a baby, were kicking my butt because I had to get up and deal with you, and I was like, ah. And you were always, ready to go, bright and shiny morning.
Still am.
Yeah, yeah. I think your brother tends to be a little more snuggly. Like if he wakes up in the morning, he wants to like snuggle in and be there for a while. Whereas you would pop up and be like, okay, what are we doing now?
What do
But so routines though, I mean, I think routines have a lot to do with our relationship with time too. I mean, you got pretty spun out there with the COVID and this class schooling and all of that, where you didn't have a like structure and expectations in a way that was external, and you kind of lost it.
Yeah, I think that was me just following my impulsiveness and then just following the dopamine. That's the way I've best heard it described, is you just follow the dopamine. If you have ADHD, you're just like, whatever task makes you feel fulfilled is what you end up doing. And if that's sitting on the couch playing video games for 3 hours, then it's hard to get yourself to stop that.
Well, hopefully you will try to work on that. So let's talk about routines and habits, because that was the other thing you brought up. So, I definitely have my own habits that, and of wind up and wind down and all of that. I guess I am curious, because you're in a roommate situation and I've got a spouse who I've been with for 23 plus years. So I don't have, the same kind of relationship with, I don't know. I mean,
well, I do think that that's one of our problems, is that we have very few routines or habits. Everything happens as the day, like it is what it is. So if this day we have to wake up at this time, then we'll wake up at that time. And if this day we have to wake up at this time, we'll wake up at that time. So I think it's like, it's not like waking up at 9 a.m. Okay, if I work at 11, I'll wake up at 9 again. It's like, nope, I'll wake up at 10 and get ready for work right away. And I think that there's a huge group of people. I've never done this, though. I probably should, but who just wake up at the same time every day. And then they're like, okay, I have this extra time in the morning now before work.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I have my alarm set 7 days a week for the same time. Sometimes I wake up earlier than the alarm, but I try not to let myself sleep past it ever. Just because I do think that there's an importance to like a little bit of that telling your body what the scoop is, But I'm just curious with other people, roommates, girlfriends, do they have the same schedule as you? Do they not?
Like I said, it's very much like as it happens. Like, I don't think we eat dinner at the same time every day. Some of the habits that I definitely notice is that as soon as we wake up, we both turn on the TV.
No.
Not surprising, though.
Does she have a TV in her dorm?
Yeah, she does, actually.
No.
Over there very much, though.
Are you confessing something?
What?
So is she a morning person, night person?
Definitely not a morning person.
Okay. And how's your roommate?
Bryson is whatever. I could knock on his door at 6 a.m. and he'd be fine, or I could knock on his door at 11 a.m. and he'd be fine.
I mean, so there's not any conflict if you get up and make a cup of coffee and...
No, I can turn on the speakers in the living room and they don't wake up. The same way with me, though. I can sleep through thunderstorms. Oh,
the joys of being young. I wake up if a cat sneezes. So you're talking about that you don't have routines and you feel like that could be an issue.
Yeah. And I think that people who do have routines are pretty more successful.
Well, and I would agree with that. And, like I said, when I'm working with people's energy and I'm coaching people with their energy, if they're trying to start something new, they have to show up to it. I used have to, which is the dreaded word, but it would be most beneficial if they showed up to it and they put themselves in the position of having relationship with that time and that consciousness being directed in a specific way. And I have definitely learned, I'm a multitasker like crazy, which Dad often refers to as ADHD, but I do not have ADHD at all. In fact, my executive function skills are a little excessive. So maybe that's why you guys didn't get any. I don't know. But I can get into these rabbit holes, right? Where I'm like, okay, I'm going to sit down and work on my website. And then I click on a link and the link doesn't work, but the link is somewhere else. And it's on another different page or a different thing. And then I got find out, oh, I didn't even do that. My office manager did that. And that's why it's this way. So now I got to tell her, and I get into this I get really far away from my original intention. And I have to sometimes remind myself, like, Leanne, right now you are working with the Light Council. Just work with the Light Council right now. Don't do anything else. And then, phone calls happen and things like that go on too. So I feel like the learning to have a habit of functioning with focus, grounded intention, like you're sitting down and you're saying, right now, I intend to have a great podcast with my mother. And I'm not going to think about what I'm going to do with my friends later tonight. It's Friday night, right?
Right. And I think it's that anticipation that's the difference between everything, because I do find myself anticipating stuff a lot.
Yeah.
I get to something and then I'm just anticipating the next thing.
Right. Which, I mean, a lot of the energy healers talk about, like, now being present, being, that's what the spiritual path is all about. Is like, get out of that reaching for this, unknown future. And that goes with money and things like that too. The previous topics we've had, like, you only have what you have right then. And learning to accept the energy you're in and surrender to that sometimes is the best way to move forward.
Yeah. But no matter how many ways you put it, I don't think that people have gotten the message yet.
I know.
I've heard it forever.
You've heard it forever. Are you getting it?
Not yet.
Why not?
That's the problem. I think we focus too much on being in the moment, and we just focus on that. Just, we think to ourselves, be in the moment, just be present, and then we can't. Because I think if you focus too much on it, then you just disassociate from that.
Because you're trying too hard.
Yeah, because you're like, okay, I'm focusing on it, but what am I focusing on? I'm focusing on being in the moment. Oh, then I'm not in the moment.
Yeah. Well, and so this, you've been taught it. I've tried to teach it to you. What's the barrier to learning it?
I think getting out of my own head.
Because, people say to me all the time, oh, well, I would have done so much better if I'd known this stuff earlier in my life. But I don't know that that's necessarily true. I feel like there almost is a point in time where you finally accept that truth. But when you're young, I think you fight against the rules of the universe.
Yeah. And I think that I just do things, and then I go and I look back afterwards and I'm like, well, I should have known that in hindsight. And I think that happens a lot, where I'm just like, I can remember those things, but not until after the fact.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it would be interesting for us to talk about barriers to learning this stuff. Because, I mean, I've taught you a bunch of stuff that people, come to me and try to learn from me now. And really they're like trying to unlearn a whole lot of their lives. And so that they can make space for a different truth. And I don't know, you've had the opportunity not to necessarily have, at least not the full-fledged hammering of unconsciousness in. There's been an invitation for you to be more observant and more present and that kind of stuff. Or do you think that's a bunch of...
Well, I think that for me specifically, the absence of stimulation is what makes me kind of... It's like, to actually appreciate something, it has to be subtle.
Okay. Mindfulness. All right. Well, in our last minute here together, let's talk about next week's topic and our next week plan. So we are trying to make this a regular time so you guys can plan it. But most of you are listening after the fact or, on our podcast series. So thank you for whenever you find us and listen to us. But as far as like the live broadcast goes next week, we don't know yet when it's going to be because Mason has gotten a new job and I have to go to the dentist just for cleaning. So it won't be the same time next week, but let's talk about the topic. I brought this up last week and I think we should really put it on the list, is to talk about when you're an energetically sensitive, aware person who's been taught to be energetically sensitive and aware, it's difficult sometimes to be around challenging people. And yet we have to be. And I think you and your brother, this was one of the things that perhaps the downside of being raised by a sensitive or being a sensitive yourself is that you couldn't just fake it with certain teachers and people in your life, right? There was definitely like certain areas. And when we talk about this, we won't put out names, but you and I will know who we're talking about, right? And we can talk about, just how hard it was, and similar to being your mother and having to send you out into the world with knowing that the energetics were really rough and I couldn't protect you from them.
Okay,
plan.
That sounds good.
All right, you guys. We will see you next week sometime whenever we're on again. I'll be posting it later. I hope you all are doing great. See you later.